Welcome to Boys in the Hood TV. Today we're going to be discussing the story of Baby Duke, known as the Squabble King from the Rollin 60s. Now, Brian Buchanan, aka Baby Duke, was a reputable member of the 60s ever since his teen years. Now, he was born in 1976 in the Hyde Park area. Now, early on, he would witness his family and friends lose their lives by either being affiliated or being actual members. Now, Duke would eventually attend Horace Mann Junior High School, which was a breeding ground for squabbles. Now, different hoods like the 60s, the 9-0s, and the 8 trays all went here. And if you had never been into a fight in your life, this would be the school where you would get your first fade. Now, it was said that Duke was a menace at Horace, even stealing another kid's Levi jean coat and then wearing it the next day in front of the same kid who he stole the jeans from. Now, by the time he hit high school, Baby Duke would be put onto the hood, and he would be repping the 6-0s super hard at Crenshaw High School. Now, although he was gangbanging, Duke was still book smart and made sure he still attended classes. But like a lot of students, his tendency to run the streets would cause him to go into continuation school for the remainder of his high school term. Now, in his younger years as a 60 member, he looked up to some of the older homies like Lil Bam from 6-0, who also took a liking to Duke due to his squabbles. But Big Duke and Bo D from the 60s would give Baby Duke his name. Now, in 1988, Duke would have his first baby girl named Sheree with his high school girlfriend. Now, being a father at his early age was a very hard thing, especially being a teenager and not having any real income. So this would leave Baby Duke to hustling in the streets. Now, the Rollin 60s were known for having certain places in the hood that they would go to fight, and they would call them Thunderdomes. Now, one of the most well-known areas was the 54th Street Elementary School, was set right in the 60s neighborhood. Now, most of the time they went up there to play basketball and different things like that, but for the most part, it was where everybody would run fades and handle DPs at. And this is where Baby Duke would earn a lot of respect from his fellow 60 members and get his squabble game up. But not long after, Duke's tendency to fight would land him into trouble with the law and get him a short stint at juvie. Now, once he finally got out, Duke had become even more crafty with his hands. Now, by the early 90s, during a friendly game of football with the 40s, a 16-year-old Baby Duke was said to get into an altercation with another man from the hood, and he would punch this dude so hard in his mouth, his tooth would go flying in the air. Now, Baby Duke was also known for kicking it and hanging out with a lot of older OGs from the hood, especially the Tiny Lokes from the turf. This is where Duke picked up that old school fighting mentality. Now, when it come to running fades, there was no age limit to who Duke would fight. It was said that he would even fight dudes that was 2 times his size and didn't back down an inch. He was just one of those young dudes that loved to fight no matter who was against. Now, he not only inherited the old school fight mentality, but he kept the old school Crip appearance up, like rocking the khakis with his flag. As most would call him, he was a young G with an old soul. Now, over the next several years, Duke would be hustling in the streets to take care of his family. Now, when it comes to hustling out here to try to make ends meet, Duke would find himself in and out of jail on different various charges. Now, around 95, Duke would take a major loss when his homie, Bo D from the 60s, would be killed by members of the Pyroos at a death row party at the El Rey Theater.
He came, allegedly, he was on the DJ's guest list. DJ Quick was having this big problem with MC8 at the time. Quick had just got off stage performing, and they were walking by, and he was just hollering at him and, started pointing at Quick and disrespecting Quick. And then the melee started.
That nigga on Bloods, nigga on woo-woo-woo, nigga on Crip, nigga on woo-woo-woo. And it was just, it happened like that.
Now, Duke would eventually go on to have another baby girl by the name of Maya, adding to his family. Now, around the same time, he would make it official with his high school sweetheart, Misha, and asked her to marry him. Now, during Duke's wedding, Duke made sure he stayed G'd up and repping the 60s by rocking his blue NY Yankees fitted hat during the entire wedding. Now, throughout the hood, Duke would become somewhat of a hood star, riding around in his 96 Impala. Now, although he did love his hood, he definitely loved his family much more, especially his oldest daughter, who he was very protective of, even the night of her prom. But of course, in any hood, there's always going to be a lot going on, but Duke was one of those G's that believed in loyalty and respect more than anything. Now, at the time, rumors had been floating around the hood that one of the homies from the set had some smut on their name, and they had been talking to the police. So Duke, being who he was, somebody that was always frontlining, he wanted to press the issue and see what was really going on. On February 6, 2007, at around 2 a.m., Baby Duke would pull up on 11th Ave in the hood. Now outside was a few homies from the 60s, including the alleged Snitch. Now as we all know, Duke loved to squabble more than anything before he'd ever pull out a gun. Now being the G that Duke was, he hopped out, approached the alleged Snitch, and had a brief conversation with him. Now it was not exactly clear on what words were exchanged between Duke and his other 60 member, but it was enough to piss this person off. And as Duke turned his back after the conversation, that's when the other 60 member, he pulled out a strap and opened fire. Duke would be hit multiple times in his back before hitting the pavement. Immediately, everybody would break out and take off running. Police and EMTs would arrive shortly after, and they would immediately rush Duke to a nearby hospital. But sadly, hours later, Brian Buchanan, aka Baby Duke, would die at the age of 31 from his injuries. I would like to thank everybody for tapping in, and I'll see y'all next time.